Let's discuss conceptually the idea of covered options versus protective options. So I'm talking specifically about protective puts and protective calls compared to covered calls and covered puts. I actually find the protective options to be a lot easier to explain. So let's start with those. So with a protective put, the idea is you own a stock and you want insurance or protection or a hedge in case the stock goes down. So the way I like to think about it, if I own stock, what's my fear? My fear is that the stock goes down. How do I offset that fear? I buy a put, which gives me the right to sell the stock. So for example, I own ABC stock at 100. I'm afraid it might go down, but I still want it to go up. That's the key. I still want it to go up. I buy a put, maybe with a strike price of 90 for a premium of whatever, 2, right? Which means 200. So God forbid, the stock collapses, goes down to 80, I can just sell it to the seller of the put for 90. So what would I lose? I would lose the 10 because I have the right to sell at 90 and I bought it at 100, plus I lose the 2 premium that I paid, right? And the break even is just going to be, if I take the stock price, which is 100, I'm starting out paying the premium. Break even definitionally means I can't be in a negative or in a positive situation. I have to just be at 0. So the stock needs to go up by 2 to cover my premium. So that puts me at 102, right? That's a protective put. Protective call. Same idea, except you're short the stock. Shorting a stock means you're borrowing someone else's stock, selling it now with the intention of buying it back in the future at a lower price, and your goal is to make the spread. The analogy I give for this is like, let's say I have a friend and he has a fancy watch. I think his watch is overrated. I would sell his watch, and then I would repurchase it ideally in the future at a lower price and return the watch to him. I'd obviously pay him some margin interest while I'm holding it, and I would make the difference, right? So let's say I'm short 100 shares of stock at ABC stock at 100, and I want to protect myself. So how would I protect myself? So in order to cover a short position, I have to buy back the stock. What gives me the ability to buy back the stock? A call. So I'm short the stock at 100. I have a call. I buy let's say a 105 call with a premium of 3. So that means that if the stock starts rising drastically, I'm able to buy it back from the seller of the call at 105. So I would lose $5 per share because I sold the stock at 100, bought it back at 105. Plus, I would lose the premium that I paid off the bat. I think I said 3. I don't remember. So 5 plus 3 equals 8 or $800. Covered positions. Covered positions. So with a protective position, the option is protecting the stock. With a covered position, the stock is protecting the option, and the reason you're using it is you're using it to generate income. This is a little bit harder to understand, but bear with me. So let's say you own the stock, ABC at 100. You don't see the stock going up very much in the near future. You do think long-term has a lot of potential. In the near term, you don't see it having a lot of potential. So what are you going to do? You're going to sell a call, which is the obligation to sell the stock, let's say for a strike of 110 for a premium of 2, right? So what do you want the stock to do? Ideally, you want the stock to stay where it's at, right? Stay put, no pun intended, or you would want it to rise up to, ideally, the perfect scenario, it goes exactly up to 110. Why? Because that's where your maximum gain happens. I mean, it would happen above 110 as well, but you would have FOMO a little bit. So if the stock were to rise to like 120, you would have to sell it at 110. So you wouldn't be losing any money. You'd still be in your max gain range, but the problem is you'd be missing out on potential gain. So you'd be upset, hey, I should have not sold the call or should have had a higher strike on the call, right? So you're sort of moderately bullish if you, unless you bought the stock and you sold the call exactly where you own the stock at, then you're just neutral, really, right? But the key to understand is with any of these covered or protective positions, the stock dictates the direction where you want it to go because you're spending a lot more money on the stock than you're spending or receiving on the option. So what I'm getting at is with a protective put, you're long stock buy put, you're bullish. With a protective call, you're short stock buy call, you're bearish. If it's a covered call, long stock sell call, you're actually either moderately bullish or neutral, right? If it's at the same strike. So if the call is at the same strike. So if it's the stock price at 100 and sell the call with a strike of 100. So you are moderately bullish / neutral, right? So your gain, your max gain would happen at the 110 that we mentioned before. So that would be, I like to call that the runway, the difference between the stock price and the call price. So you'd be up 10, you'd gain 10. And then after that, you would just gain the premium because you're receiving the premium in exchange for limiting your gain at that 110 level, right? And your max loss would be if the stock were to collapse to zero and you would essentially lose the price of the stock minus what you receive for the premium, right? And your break even is going to be actually the same thing, but if you don't count the hundreds and that kind of thing, but because with the max, with the max loss, that'd be in multiples of 100. With a break even, that's just a price, not a number. So if let's say the stock was at 100, you're receiving the call premium. So you're receiving the call premium in your pocket. In order to get to break even, you can't have money in your pocket. So the stock has to go against you. So that means it just goes down by the premium. So 100, whatever number I said, 2 or 3. So 98 or 97. Last one, covered put. Sort of a weird one because you're short stock and you're selling a put. You might think, why would you do that, right? Generally speaking, people are short for short periods of time, and you're always going to have a short-term capital gain with a short position. And besides, you're paying margin interest. So, the reasoning for that could be maybe you want to cover some of the margin interest while you're short. Maybe you think it's going to go down over the next month, but over the next week, it's not going to go down as much, so might as well sell the put and collect some extra money, right? So you are still either going to be moderately bearish or just neutral, right? You're definitely not bullish, right? So that's one thing you can note. If you're long stock and then dealing with an option, you're definitely not going to be the opposite, right? So if you're long, you're definitely not going to be bearish. And if you're short, you're definitely not going to be bullish. But you could either be fully, so if you're short stock, you could either be fully bearish or moderately bearish or essentially neutral. So if you're short the stock and you're selling the put at the same strike as the stock, you're just going to be neutral. But if there's like a little bit of a gap, you're more moderately bearish, right? So let's say I'm short 100 shares of ABC at 100. I'm going to sell a 90 put for a premium of 1, right? So basically what am I saying? If the stock drops below 90, I have to buy it back at 90, right? So what's my max gain going to be? The runway from 100 to 90, the 10, plus the $1 in premium. So it'd be 11 per share, $1,100, right? That's going to be my maximum gain. Now, what is my, because if it goes below 90, I'd be forced to buy it back there, right? What's my max loss? Unlimited, because I'm not bullish. If the stock goes way up, how much can I lose? On unlimited, right? I do have that one premium that's going to protect me by 1, but it's not really going to protect me much, right? If the stock goes up to 1,000, right? There's theoretically no limit to how much I could lose. Now, the break even with this one, sort of the trickiest one, because you're short and selling a put. So the way I like to think about it is I'm short and I'm selling a put. That means I'm collecting money in my pocket, right? So I have $1 in my pocket off the bat. So if I'm short at 100, and I have $1 in my pocket, so I need to lose that $1. How do I lose the $1? The stock goes against me up $1. So it'd be the break even would be 101. Hope this helps. Please like and subscribe and listen for more. Thanks.